and welcome to the Wealthy LaLa Show with myself, Laurie Larson. Today is episode 176-2. I'm so excited. I'm not gonna lie. I'm looking forward to when I'm done with the dash twos. And I've now done 25 of them. Like, how awesome is that? So, 1/4 of the way to go. So, um, anyways, hope you guys had a great weekend. We have a beautiful, beautiful clear sky today, and I'm excited about the possibilities. I got up and did my meditation this morning, and I'm not going to lie, today was a bit of a struggle. Today was one of those days where, man, I had a tough time focusing. And it kind of brings me into the topic that I wanted to talk about today. So I've been reading that book, Running on Empty, Overcoming Your Childhood Emotional Neglect by Jonice Webb, PhD. So she's a doctor. And it's so interesting because as I've been reading this book, like I'm probably about 3/4 of the way through, it's how pretty much probably all of us had some form of this. Like, how many of us, how much does our reality know? Because when they talk about overcoming childhood emotional neglect, what she's actually talking about is how none of us were actually really taught how to deal with our emotions. Okay. Like just that even, right? Like you could have been raised in a super loving household and just been not how to deal with your emotions. Maybe like in the book, she talks about one family where they wanted to make it look like everything was okay. The parents had 5 kids. It was the easiest way to keep things under control. So no difficult emotion, nothing seen as negative. And actually even overexcitement, being too loud or anything, even all of that wasn't allowed. So they wanted to run a tight ship, kind of basically get, do their work, raise the kids and sort of move on, right? And we're seeing now, like I just really get like how much of this is tied into the whole what they call mental illness now. And how many of us were taught to deal with anger, rage, fury, hate, sadness, guilt, blame, disappointment, grief. I mean, in your family, was death talked about? Was it embraced? The good, the bad, and the ugly of it, So anyways, in this one chapter, she calls it Why Feelings Matter and What to Do with Them. And she has a quote here. Although many of us think of ourselves as thinking creatures that feel, biologically, we are actually feeling creatures that think. And that's by Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, who was a neuroscientist. So number one, she says, understanding the purpose and value of your emotions. In our society, we undervalue emotion. It's often seen as a nuisance. Words are frequently applied to it as sappy, mushy. Emotion is often thought of as a childish or an effeminate or weak. It's considered the antithesis of thought. So we have a tendency to think that smart people aren't emotional people and emotional people aren't smart. Like, isn't that fascinating? This is just so incredibly fascinating. So the reality is that the smartest people are those who use their emotions to help them think and who use their thoughts to manage their emotions. Like, could you imagine being so aware of your emotions that you're in a place to manage them? Like, don't they feel like something so often that's like a freight train that's running off the track? You're like, what is this? How do I deal with this? And can it just stop? So the key is to use emotion in a healthy, balanced way. Listen to what your feeling is telling you, then figure out a way to act upon it to better your situation, your life, or the world around you. So many of the most valuable scientific discoveries were made because scientists were passionate about his or her subject. So the scientist's passion might be driven by grief, for example, or by a wish to discover a way to help a loved one who's suffering. But most people are driven by feeling. Neuroscientists have studied extensively the evolutionary development of the human brain. For humans, the ability to feel emotion evolved millions of years before the ability to think. Human emotions originate in the limbic system, which is buried deep below the cerebral cortex, the section of the brain where thought originates. In this way, our feelings are a more basic part of who we are than our thoughts. So they're a physiological part of our body, like fingernails or knees. Like, isn't that incredible? And we make them so like wrong or see them as difficult or uncomfortable. And what if it's like, you imagine if we did that with our fingernails? Like, oh my God, I just hate fingernails. Oh God, do you guys see this? I have fingernails. Do you have fingernails too? I hate fingernails. Oh my God, I wish we could just cut them off, right? And you get that that's not going to work, but we do that with emotions. So let's see here. Our emotions cannot be erased and will not be denied any more than we can erase or deny our hunger, thirst, or our elbows or our earlobes. So why did emotion evolve in the first place? Sometimes, especially to emotionally neglected people, emotions feel like a burden. Wouldn't it be better if we didn't have to feel sad when we had a conflict with a friend, angry when someone cut us off in traffic, or anxious before a job interview? On the surface, maybe it would seem easier if we didn't have to feel those things. But my belief is that if we didn't have emotions, life would not be better. In fact, it would not be sustainable. So emotion is actually necessary for survival. Emotions tell us when we're in danger, when to run, when to fight, what's worth fighting for. Emotions are our body's way of communicating with us and driving us to do things. So here she gives a few examples of the purposes of just of a few emotions. So like the emotion is fear, it tells us to escape or self-preservation. Anger pushes us to fight back, self-protection. Love drives us to care for our spouse, children, others. Passion drives us to procreate, to create and invent. Hurt pushes us to correct a situation. Sadness tells us we're losing something important. Compassion pushes us to help others. Disgust tells us to avoid something. Curiosity drives us to explore and learn. And so, you know what I love is like, this is where I just love that I learned how to be in question. Like I always was curious. I was curious. I remember people years ago saying to me, Laurie, you always were willing to look at something different, or at a different perspective. Okay. And what I'm also really aware of, it was innately a part of who I was. And it was also kind of, made wrong. Like most of us don't like when a kid goes, why? We see them questioning as being annoying when we don't have the answers rather than universe. Could you please show me how to handle this kid who has so much curiosity? Show me where to go. Show me how to assist them. Grant me the patience, or just whatever. But we've been made wrong for being in question. So most of us just conclude, what do other people say? We decide that too, rather than actually questioning our politicians, our healthcare system, our education system, our doctors, our, any kind of healthcare provider, like even people that do alternative stuff. They don't know everything that's right about ourselves for our bodies, right? Even question the universe. Hey, universe, really? Is that what you want me to do? Can you make it clearer? Can you show me? So anyways, it says, for every emotion, there's a purpose. Emotions are incredibly useful tools to help us adapt, survive, and thrive. People who were emotionally neglected were trained to try to erase, deny, push at underground, and in some cases be ashamed of this invaluable built-in feedback system. And I mean, I really get that, most of why the older generations did that was because they didn't know what to do with it themselves, and also probably had that done to themselves. And what I've also noticed too is when you take care of yourself, then it becomes this space where you can see beyond all of that maybe happened, that was created in your world. So because they're not listening to their emotions, they are operating at a disadvantage from the rest of us. Pushing away this vital source of information makes you vulnerable and potentially less productive. It also makes it harder to live life to its fullest. Now, like, okay, well, like it goes on here. Emotions do more, though, than just drive us to do things. They also feed the human connections that give us the life, the depth and richness that make it worthwhile. In this depth and richness, which I believe provides the best answer to the question, what is the meaning of life? Emotional connections to others help us stave off feelings of emptiness as well as existential anger. So, like, really going back to this mental illness thing and stuff like that, like, I wonder, God, how are we not, to a certain extent, all mentally ill? It's just varying degrees of, um, if you want to call it that, right? Um, yeah, I just wonder, with people that are unhappy with our high rates of suicide, our high rates of unhappiness, and people not wanting to be here, not feeling satisfied in their lives, not feeling satisfied in their work or their relationships. Like, how much of it is this lack of connection that we have, like human connection with others, but connection with ourselves? um there was a woman in this book. She was a young woman who didn't share anything with anybody else, but was a fabulous listener. And then when she'd go to a party, she'd have a few drinks, she'd be the life of the party. Everybody just loved her, but she never let anybody into her world. And after one, weekend, they had like a work or a whatever party, she seemed to be fine. And then the next day, her sister found her. She had taken a whole bunch of pills and had tried to commit suicide. And when she explains it afterwards, like when she talks about the story in this woman in the book, she was a person who was like taught that all of those things that she felt about herself were incredibly, incredibly wrong. And she was a very high feeling, emotional kind of person. And, I've definitely am that type of person. Like, I feel things deeper. Now, at the same time as I've been reading this book, I've been realizing how out of touch I've been with it. So sometimes to me too, it's like when you're out of touch with it or with an emotion, it becomes like a pressure cooker, and then you wonder why you just like fly off the handle or rage at that guy who cut you off, is because all of a sudden it's like all of this stored energy, stored emotion just comes blah out, right? So she goes on to identifying and naming your feelings. Now, what I'm going to do is on tomorrow's show, I'm going to share this exercise that she gives for learning to self-monitor your feelings. And that's where, going back to my meditation, what I noticed this morning as because of the past and having made my emotions, my sensitivity, my, awareness, my feelings, having been made so wrong, I've not wanted to be present with myself. And I noticed that today in my meditation, it was a real struggle to keep bringing myself back to myself, to being present with me. And what's interesting, just kind of as a side note, is that when we're not actually present with ourselves, and we're not present sort of with the emotions and the energies that are running through us, or we're not present with the universe and the oneness of everything, the wholeness of ourselves within that universe, that's actually where we lose connection, or we've lost connection to the creativity in our lives and the depth and the richness that make it worthwhile. And so, yeah, so I just think it's really, really cool. And that yesterday I was, triggered sort of in a highly, for me, responding emotionally to a situation, you know, and seeing that I was reacting to it stronger, that reaction was information to me. So I actually found myself waking up in the middle of the night and being up for a couple hours, which I haven't been for, a few weeks, which was kind of nice. But I was aware from reading this book and from being paying attention to the meditations and stuff like that, and my presence with myself, noticing that this actually really triggered me and there was a lot stirred up in it. And again, there's a presence required to then stay with me and be sweet with me and let whatever wants to come up that I was almost in a way like judging as wrong before even found out what it was. Like, it was almost like, oh, I don't really want to deal with this. And then I'm like, no, but it's okay now. That's all okay. Because I've got me now. I've got my back. The universe has my back. I'm okay. So anyways, yeah. So tomorrow I'm going to talk about where we kind of like identifying and naming your feelings and learning to self-monitor your feelings from her book. I'm just finding this so incredibly valuable to me, so I hope it is for you. Anyways, have a great rest of your day.